Hey guys, I'm finally back to talk about the Five Nights at Freddy's book, The Twisted Ones. Now, you might remember I had this whole plan to make a video as soon as the book came out, pretty much, but in case you hadn't noticed, that didn't exactly happen. And, you know, I figure I owe you guys an explanation for this, so here it is. Basically, despite being able to read 300-ish pages in a single day, that isn't what ended up happening, and I had to space it out over the course of the last month or so. But the book is finished, and I'm ready to share my thoughts on it with you guys. Because this book, while definitely not the best novel I've ever read, does have lots more information about the FNAF universe. And in the end, that's really what we're looking for, right? More information means more answers. So, let's get into it, shall we? Before I begin going over the book, let me make one thing abundantly clear. There will be spoilers. Like I'm gonna spoil all sorts of shit. So if you haven't read the book and you plan on reading it, don't keep watching. And if you have to poop, just pause the video, come on back, and I'll be ready for you. Alright, now that it's just us people in the know, Charlie dies. She totally dies at the end of the book. Well, I mean, she most likely dies. The last line of the book is, "That's not Charlie," but we'll get into that in a bit. First things first, let's go over what happens in The Twisted Ones, and then I can, give you all the takeaways and what you should understand about this book. The Twisted Ones continues to follow Charlie after high school. Like we inferred in our earlier videos, Charlie is now in college in a new school and a new place. Although she didn't exactly move very far from home. On the contrary, her father's home and her aunt's home are both within driving distance of her campus. We quickly find out that Charlie seems to be taking after her father. She's enrolled in robotics courses and computer engineering. Not just that, but she has a knack for robotics. Not only can she understand the ramblings of her robotics teacher, Dr. Treadwell, but she's completely enthralled by the professor's lectures. It seems that Charlie's run-in with the haunted animatronics haven't deterred her from understanding robotics and artificial intelligence. If anything, her past may have made her more obsessed with understanding these subjects. We see this come to life when Charlie gets home and starts working on her secret project. And it's kind of creepy. Basically, she has two animatronic heads that are slowly learning how to talk to each other. They listen to everything that happens in her dorm room, whether or not they're actually on. They take in all the words spoken, sentences, context, and what have you, and slowly learn to build up their vocabulary. They haven't gotten very far yet, mainly conversing in 1 to 2 word sentences that really don't make much sense. It's a weird thing for someone who was almost killed by an animatronic to take interest in, but in all honesty, her little robotics project doesn't really affect the main story that much, but what it does help us understand is how Charlie's mind works. Charlie from the Silver Eyes versus Charlie now is a very different person mentally because of what's happened to her. Most people who were attacked and almost killed by Chuck E. Cheese wannabes wouldn't have anything to do with creating their own animatronics. Most wouldn't have anything to do with anything even remotely to do with artificial intelligence, but Charlie is the exact opposite. Over and over again, Charlie is berated by thoughts of her past. When she was a child with her twin brother, when her father gave her an animatronic frog and then she tore it apart when she didn't like it, or even the past events at Freddy's. These visions, this feeling of returning to a younger age and reliving past traumatic experiences, isn't unique to Charlie. In fact, it's a very well-known and treatable form of trauma. But Charlie doesn't realize the mental and emotional turmoil she's throwing herself into with her obsession with robotics. We don't have time to get into the ins and outs of what this is doing to Charlie's brain today. That'll have to be saved for another video some other time. But this reliving of trauma and constant obsession with artificial intelligence and animatronics will not only dictate the events of Charlie's life in The Twisted Ones, but it will ultimately lead to her death. Again, there's so much to talk about from a psychoanalytical standpoint that we just don't have time to get into right now. So I'm touching on it to emphasize just how important it is in dictating Charlie's actions for the rest of the book. Back to the book, Charlie gets asked out on a date by John, but whatever, who really cares? Their love, if you can even call it that, isn't important to the story at all. I mean, John says "I love you" at the end of the book, but they've been on what, like 2 dates? They barely cuddled a little in a movie, and Charlie almost stood him up twice. Come on, Scott. I get that your audience is at an age where they're a horny bunch that's eager to read about love, but seriously, that was just kind of pushing it. What is important is that after John asks Charlie out, Clay, the police officer, shows up to talk to Charlie. He takes her to a crime scene where a man has been killed and his body is covered in cuts. Clay takes Charlie to identify if the cuts were made by an animatronic, and what do you know, they totally super were. Skip forward a chapter or two and some awkward teenage conversations, and Charlie finds another dead woman outside in a field. Her dimensions, hairs, and face look similar to Charlie, leading Charlie to think that the animatronics are looking for her. Charlie calls Clay, gives him the lowdown, and then drives to the dead woman's house after finding her address on her license. In the backyard of the dead woman's house are 3 shallow graves. Charlie pieces together that the animatronics are probably hiding underground during the day and then killing at night. With that information, Charlie decides she needs to visit her father's old house. Apparently it got partially knocked down by a storm, but most of the house is still standing. Charlie and John drive over there, and after some searching, they find that a secret room that was originally hidden has now been opened up by the storm, and in that room are 3 more grave-like ditches. More importantly, they find a buried animatronic, and after looking it over, Charlie realizes that this animatronic is different than her father's. The technology is older, and it's built differently. While she's in the middle of this assessment, the animatronic comes alive and tries to eat Charlie with its chest. I mean, like, why bother chewing your food when you can just put it straight into your chest? It starts to devour Charlie's shoulder into its chest cavity, but John manages to decapitate it somehow. Maybe it was a little rusty? Maybe the head was a twist off? Either way, the head comes off and it stops trying to eat Charlie. John is nearly throwing up at this point, but it's not because of the gruesome scene that he just witnessed. As it turns out, some completely unrealistic piece of technology is behind John's nausea and whatever's going on with him. What this technology on the animatronic does is cause a sound frequency so high that it scrambles the brain and makes processing reality really weird and hard to understand and confusing, and basically it gives you too much stimulus and makes you go crazy. It makes the mind fill in the blanks, because there's too much going on for the brain to fill in all the gaps and make a clear picture of what's happening, so it makes the animatronics look scary as hell. Charlie turns off the device, and John immediately starts to feel better. But most important from all that, the weird brain sound scrambling device has AFTON robotics etched on the back. Oh snap! These older animatronics were most likely made by William Afton, aka Dave, aka the purple guy. But only in the books, not the games. More awkward teenage talking ensues until Charlie brings out a map of the victims' houses and realizes that the animatronics are making a direct line for her dorm. Guess they are going for her specifically. Using their map of the direction the animatronics are headed, Charlie calls Clay, the police officer, and tells him about this, right? You know, let the professionals handle it. Nope! Instead, Charlie, John, and Jessica all go driving around looking for a good place where animatronics might dig a shallow grave in someone's backyard. And by some miracle, they actually find the animatronics still in their graves. Now, I'm sorry, this should have been the end of the book. They find the animatronics during the day, they call Clay, and he comes to see them. At this point, Clay should have had the entire police force surrounding these things, with the FBI on standby, and SWAT, and helicopters, and whatever, just everything surrounding these animatronics, but instead he leaves the kids with the graves and evacuates the neighborhood. Way to be a cop, Clay. These idiots then stake out the graves in Clay's cop car and accidentally fall asleep until sundown when the animatronics are already gone. I'm sorry, but in terms of plot progression, that's pretty stupid. Anyway, despite clearing out the neighborhood, Clay apparently missed someone because a lady gets attacked and almost dies. So, Clay just sucks at his job. Everyone heads home without a new plan, and John asks Charlie out on another date. Seriously, dude, you just saw someone literally almost die and you're still thinking with your dick? Charlie accepts his offer, but instead of actually going on the date, she spends the night packing up sleeping clothes and heads by herself to the next place she believes the animatronics are going to be. To make a very long series of pages short, Charlie, in her traumatized brain, decides that the best thing to do is for her to be captured by the animatronics. So she gets captured by Twisted Freddy, goes for a taxi ride in his chest cavity, and then nearly drowns by dirt when he burrows back underground. She's able to get herself out of the animatronic only to find herself in another kids' entertainment establishment. Wait, what? So the Twisted Freddy burrowed through the floor of this Chuck E. Cheese place? Or was there just a giant pile of dirt in the living room? Seriously, there's some serious plot holes in this book, guys. Anyways, she gets out and gets taken on an acid trip as the animatronics attack her from every direction. Meanwhile, John got stood up and realizes Charlie is probably in danger, calls Clay, and together with Jessica, they find Charlie's sleeping clothes at the house where the animatronics, the twisted animatronics, abducted Charlie. With no clues on where the animatronics went, they all go to Clay's house. Apparently, Clay is still an idiot, and instead of destroying the old Fazbear animatronics, he just kept them in his basement? entertainment? And somehow he was surprised and upset when his wife left him. Seriously, this Clay guy should not be protecting the peace with a firearm. Not the sharpest tool in the shed. So they go down to the old animatronics and try to get them to help find Charlie. For no apparent reason, the animatronics wake up and start running towards the establishment where Charlie is currently being held. So they arrive just in time to find Charlie losing her mind to the brain scrambling and light noise devices I talked about earlier. Clay destroys the lights, letting everyone's minds at ease, until Dave shows up in the golden Bonnie suit. He didn't die, and thanks to his fusion with the animatronic, he can now control the other animatronics. And apparently he now goes by Springtrap. None of this makes any sense, but I swear this is what happens in the book. So the twisted animatronics end up fighting the other animatronics, Springtrap ends up fighting Charlie, and the entire structure begins to collapse. And apparently this kid's entertainment place is under Charlie's house the whole time? What? You can't just do shit like this because it's convenient. You can't. That makes no sense. How would this have not been found by anyone after the storm? Whatever. This book is fiction. Just go with it. Everyone escapes, but Charlie gets captured in Twisted Freddy's chest cavity. John grabs her hand and tells her he loves her. The spring locks go off and blood flows from the animatronic. Later on, everyone is chilling at a lunch place thinking about Charlie when a woman shows up that looks a lot like Charlie. Everyone is happy and runs over to greet her when John says, "That's not Charlie," and then the book ends. Seriously, that's how the book ends. Now, that woman totally isn't Charlie. Based on the description of the blood flowing from the animatronic and Charlie's arm going limp, it's safe to say Charlie did die. In addition to that, throughout the book, Charlie is described as not really caring about clothes or ever wearing anything particularly feminine, yet the woman that they saw at the end of the book is described as wearing a dress. All this tells me is this isn't Charlie, so who is it then? Well, I do have a theory. We never see Springtrap die. We also know Springtrap has control of other animatronics and that he's able to use those weird fictional brain scrambling devices to make people perceive things differently than how they actually are. The old animatronics are also described as being warm to touch and feeling like they have actual skin. It's my belief that this woman is actually an animatronic controlled by Springtrap, who has come to take out everyone who had anything to do with Dave's downfall in the Silver Eyes. But we honestly won't know for sure until the next book comes out. However, we did learn one piece of major information from the novel. Henry, Charlie's father, who we believed created all the animatronics, did not create all of them. Charlie was able to verify that some of the animatronics were her father's work, but these older ones were not. If this statement is true in both the books and the games, then this sheds a whole new light on who might be at fault for the children's deaths in FNAF. We've had many theories that point towards Henry being the ultimate killer instead of William Afton in the games, because Henry built these animatronics, not Afton. But with this new information, we could be completely wrong on that front. I'm not saying Afton is for sure the lone killer and that Henry is completely innocent, but it certainly makes the story more murky. We're really only going to get answers if more FNAF games come out. Scott really left us hanging with that sister location update and all the purple guy cutscenes and that Springtrap cutscene at the end. But with the FNAF games on hold and possibly being cancelled outright altogether, we may never know what really happened at Freddy's. We can only infer so much from the novel because the universe is separate from the games. There are crossovers and information, but there's no way to know that Afton building some of these animatronics is one of those crossovers. So for now, we just have to speculate and hope that more information gets released in the future. Fortunately, at the end of August, the Freddy files will be released, and hopefully in that, there will be some information about what really happened during those 5 nights at Freddy's. Or just during everything, all of it. All of it. But this is just my analysis of the Twisted Ones. There's a lot to cover in such a short period of time, so I had to skip over a lot. And I do plan on doing that video analysis of Charlie's trauma and everything that happened to her mind during the books. So watch out for that sometime in the upcoming weeks, and in the meantime, feel free to check out some of our other indie horror games that we've covered recently. That's all for today. I'm Grant, and I'll see you all next time.